Hello there, and welcome to Wildcard Decks, a channel where I like to highlight some of the more off-meta options and some cards that aren't perhaps used in the context of the leaders that we're looking at. Today we've got a bit of a change of pace because for the first time I played Twin Suns. So the deck that we're going to go through is a Jabba and Bossk combo, so quite thematic in that you can put out bounties on your opponents and also damage them with Bossk's ability. So we'll get into it. So a few things to note if you're not familiar with Twin Suns for deck building. They have two leaders. They both have to be heroism or villainy. You can't mix and match. The one exception is Chancellor Palpatine. But because Chancellor Palpatine starts as a hero, then your second leader has to be a hero. But then, of course, you can flip Chancellor Palpatine, so then you get access to the villainy cards as well. So you have potentially 5 aspects if you choose that particular route. You can't have duplicate cards, so you can only have one OVs, basically. And at the moment, it's 50 card minimum. When set 4 has released, it will be 80 minimum, so that will be quite a major shift. If you're not familiar with the rules of Twin Suns or how it differentiates from Premier, then there will be a link to a video from FFG which goes over the rules, because they will probably have covered it better than I will. So in terms of the numbers, in terms of units, we've got 31 on the ground and 8 in space, so we are quite light in space. This deck overall does have 55 cards because I couldn't decide what else to cut, and there were just a bunch of cards that I wanted to use. In terms of resource costs, we've got a very wide spread. We are quite heavy at the top end as well, and we do seem to spike at 5 resources. I do seem to remember that being the most difficult pool to cut from. And then in terms of rarity, there are a lot of legendaries, but that's kind of going to be more likely because as you can only have one of each card, then you're going to have a wider pool of legendaries to choose from, and some aren't that great if you don't have all 3 of them. Anyway, and then special is the Phase 3 Dark Trooper from set 2 starter deck. So in terms of the leaders, Jabba, his non-deploy action is to put a bounty on a unit, and if that bounty is claimed, the next unit you play this phase costs 1 less. Now, the way bounties work in Twin Suns is whoever defeats that unit claims that bounty. So even though you're the one who has set the bounty, it's the player who actually defeats the unit that gets to claim that bounty. Now, if you are playing against an Emperor Palpatine player, for example, and you put a bounty on one of their units, if they use Emperor Palpatine's action to defeat their own unit with a bounty, they are the player that chooses who gets the benefit of that bounty. They don't get the benefit of the bounty themselves, but they get to choose who gets the effect. So just something to keep in mind. But yeah, the reason I chose this particular pairing is because I just wanted to sit back and cause a bit of chaos potentially, and maybe influence some people into taking out units that I didn't want sitting around. When Jabba deploys, he's a 212, he's a 7, so he's a late leader deploy, but I have kind of cancelled that out a little bit with Bossk being a 5. But when deployed, another friendly unit captures an enemy non-leader unit. So this is very powerful. If you've seen my previous Jabba Yellow deck video, you will understand how powerful. But combined with Bossk, so in the first game that I played, I was waiting on deploying Bossk for 7 resources so that I could then play Jabba and Bossk would capture an enemy unit because a leader is harder to remove in general. Unfortunately, I waited too long and the perfect situation never arose, so you live and learn. But anyway, when Jabba deploys, you capture, but also his bounty increases to a 2 resource discount if it is claimed. So another something to keep in mind. Bossk's non-deploy action is deal 1 damage to a unit with a bounty. You may give it +1 for this phase as well. So with Jabba, you're always going to be able to have a bounty out. If your opponent kills that unit beforehand, then sure, you can't do the ping, but then it doesn't really matter, I guess. Interestingly, the +1, you could choose to give one of your opponents a power boost in the hope that they attack someone else's base, or if it means they would take out a problematic unit, then that is something to consider as well. Now, Bossk deploys on 5. As I say, the plan that I was going for was to have Bossk deploy on 7 resources or 6 resources, and then flip with Jabba immediately and get him to capture something. So 4/6 stats, which are right, and then when you collect a bounty, you may collect that bounty again, so you can double the effect. Use this ability only once each round, so you can't go on an absolute bounty spree, but still. With Jabba's unit discount, you could potentially, if Jabba's not deployed, claim that bounty twice and get a 2 resource discount on the next unit you play, so that could be quite tasty. It's not necessarily going to be particularly likely to happen, but it's a possibility. So yeah, that is the combo of leaders that I decided to go for. So there's a lot of cards to get through, so I'm not going to go through every single one in detail. I will highlight a few that are particularly important and those that have a perhaps different interaction within Twin Suns or a more powerful interaction within Twin Suns. So Salacious Crumb is absolutely crucial because there's not a whole lot of healing in this deck, considering the aspects that we're in. Not much of a surprise, but he can bounce, and your opponents initially probably aren't going to be too concerned about him because he's not really a threat in and of himself, but he does help massively to keep you alive. Bib Fortuna, it can be nice to be able to get an event out for cheaper. That's all he's there for. Cloud Rider, cheap ambush, kill something that you want to get rid of quite quickly. Colonel Yularen, so him combined with Salacious, where you can get a lot of healing going. Pretty much as soon as you deploy Yularen, your opponents will look to kill him, so you might be able to get 2 or 3 healing out of him. So probably the ideal situation would be deploy Yularen and then deploy Salacious, so you get a total of 3 healing from when Yularen deploys, and then combination of his effect and Salacious's. So yeah, but Yularen will get targeted straight away and not last very long. First Legion Snowtrooper, I think, is an interesting. Just realised I didn't say what base I was running. It was Jabba's palace, of course, so that gave us yellow aspect. So we've got green, yellow, and aggression, basically. My mistake. But anyway, First Legion Snowtrooper. So this I thought would be quite interesting because if you're Bossk pinning some units with Jabba's bounty attached to them, then this unit will get more power because when it attacks a damaged unit, it gets +2 and gains overwhelm. So it can punch up a bit. So I thought that would be an interesting include. Gamorrean Retainer is just to help keep you alive by having a Sentinel, but you need another green unit on the battlefield. But if you've got Salacious bouncing back and forth, that is something to bear in mind as well, because once Salacious has bounced back to your hand, if he was the only green unit, then you no longer have Sentinel. Reputable Hunter, if there's a bounty on the field, it doesn't have to be your bounty, it can be any unit that's got a bounty, then this costs 1 less to play, so this is in fact a 2 resource play the majority of the time. Some more ground units. So Seasoned Shore Trooper, it gains 2 power when you get 6 more resources. We do have some ramp in this deck, but as you can only have 1 OVs, there's only going to be a limited amount of ramp that you can do. Hunter of the Haxian Brood is another unit that gets bonus when there's a bounty around. It gets a shield, so a 4/3 that's shielded is quite nice. Dark Trooper, just for Sentinel to try and help us keep alive. Super Laser Technician is one of the ramp options. Fall on to ambush in and hit for 4 if you so desire. You don't have to if you don't want to. We do, of course, have Zuckuss on the off chance that we get them both at the same time. Jango Fett is particularly potent because, again, you will often have a bounty out on the field at any one time. He's quite beefy with a 6 health pool as it is, but when attacking a unit with a bounty, he gets +3 and gains overwhelm. So again, he is going to be doing some business if you're able to get him to attack a bountied unit. And as a bonus, you get to draw a card whenever he defeats a unit as well. Got Bossk, who's another ambusher, and when you play an event, deal 2 damage to a unit. So there'll be a lot of units to choose from because you've got 3 other players, potentially, anyway. You can play it with 3 players as well. Darth Maul is an interesting one with Twin Suns because he can attack 2 units instead of 1, but all they have to do is be in the same arena. So they don't have to be controlled by the same player, so you can wipe out one player's unit and another player's unit. Darth Maul is probably going to die as well, but you've taken out 2 units, so I think that's quite an interesting interaction in Twin Suns. Discerning Veteran, not a card that sees a whole lot of play, but basically when he's played, you can capture any non-leader ground unit, unless there's some kind of text note saying it can't be captured. I think IG11 is the only one who has that at the moment. Speaking of, he's a 6/5, pretty good, but on attack, you may deal 3 damage to a damaged ground unit. Now, as there's 3 other players potentially, it's going to be quite likely, I would say, that there is going to be a damaged unit at any one time. So you're going to be able to do chip damage quite often, I would say. Kersantan, so he's another one who gets a bonus when there's a bounty on the field. So when played, if an enemy unit has a bounty, you may ready this unit. So he's quite beefy at a 7, and crucially, the more damage he gets on him, the better he gets, because on attack, choose a ground unit, you may deal 1 damage to it for each damage on this unit. So if you look at it, he can have up to 6 damage on him without dying. That is going to kill a lot of units by itself on attack. But if you really need to, you can attack into that unit as well and do a total of 9 damage. I mean, that is definitely going to kill pretty much everything in the game, even if it's got a lightsaber on it. So the client is out of aspect, so he will cost 5 unless you hit it off of Bounty Hunter's Quarry. But he is basically there, again, to put more bounties out in the field and also to provide another source of healing. Of course, you do have to be a little bit careful if you are going to use his bounty action, because anyone can claim it. So you may not want them being able to heal 5 damage from their base. However, it would also provide a very big incentive for the other players to take out a particular unit if you do not want it sticking around. So again, you can potentially manipulate the other players into doing what you are looking for, and whilst they're trying to kill everyone else's units, they are not trying to kill yours, so that's always a good thing as well. Trandoshan Hunters, another bounty bonus unit, so 6/4, quite aggressive stats. It has Overwhelm, but when played, if an enemy unit has a bounty, give an experience token to this unit. So in a lot of cases, it is going to be a 7/5, which is again very aggressively statted. Zero the Hut, not a unit that sees a whole lot of play, if any, to be honest. But when played for each opponent, you may exhaust a unit that player controls, so he is exponentially better in Twin Suns. He's got 2/8 as well, so he's quite beefy. So he's a good target for when flipping Jabba to capture an enemy unit. And then his ability changes on attack. For each opponent, you may exhaust a resource that player controls. So if you manage to have the initiative in Twin Suns, attack with him straight away, and you could be scuppering some of your opponent's plans because they will have 1 resource less to work with than they otherwise would have. Zuckuss combines well with Forlom, as I'm sure you already know. Covetous Rivals, so another bounty bonus unit. So when played and on attack, you may deal 2 damage to a unit with a bounty. So again, with Jabba's bounty action, it's quite likely there's going to be a unit with a bounty out there. So when it's deployed, 2 damage to that, and then exponentially just another 2 damage to any unit with a bounty, so quite useful. Now we get to our top end ground, so we've got Cad Bane, because again, you can have a lot of units available to capture, probably, so you can capture up to 3 enemy non-leader units with a total of 8 or less remaining HP, and if you do deploy him, you could do a bit of negotiating with your opponents and say, well, if I don't capture these ones, you attack their base, yeah? So you can give that a go. Now, on attack, this is interesting because it's the defending player may rescue a card they own guarded by this unit. So let's say you don't capture one player's units at all. You can attack into their base and units, and no one will get rescued. So yeah, Cad Bane is quite interesting for Twin Suns in particular. Dryden Voss, so pretty much essential for any Jabba deck, but basically, when played, choose a captured card guarded by a unit you control. You may play it for free under your control. So again, you are going to get a massive, massive swing potentially. So you've got things like Discerning Veteran. I haven't got to the events yet, but we've got Relentless Pursuit to capture things as well. Obviously, we've got Cad Bane who captures. We've got the Jabba Deploy to capture as well. So yeah, we've got despite the limited card pool, we do still have a decent number of options to be able to pull this off. Jabba's Rancor, because we've got Jabba as a leader, it is a 7 cost to deploy, not an 8. So a 9/9 for 7 is just nuts. When played on attack, deal 3 damage to another friendly unit and 3 damage to an enemy ground unit. So you're going to have a good choice to pick from for that 3 damage. And again, you could do some negotiating for your opponents to avoid that 3 damage. If you don't have any other units deployed, then because it says another friendly ground unit, it doesn't do the damage to itself. So, but typically you're just going to do the damage to Jabba because he's got 12 health. He's going to be soaking that up like nobody's business. Got Maul to ambush in. He's underworld. We've got a lot of underworld units, so you can switch the damage over if you so desire. Emperor Palpatine, because you can spread out 6 damage as you want, so you could be wiping out an opponent's board or finishing off a wide variety of units. And then Reinforcement Walker, for more healing, basically, if we do manage to get to that point. Onto the space. So TIE Silencer, on the off chance that there's a discard card effect, you can discard it and still manage to play it. Elite P38, this would combine fairly well with Bossk's pinging ability. You might be able to finish a unit off. Punishing one is quite interesting with Twin Suns because basically when an upgraded enemy unit is defeated, you may ready this unit, use it only once each round, but you don't have to defeat the unit yourself. And as there's 3 other players, it's going to be fairly likely that, well, might be less likely it's upgraded, but enemy units are going to be getting defeated every round pretty much. So it's possible you'll be able to ready this up without actually having done anything yourself. So always useful. 3 damage to a space unit from the Interceptor, just keep things under control there, hopefully. Slaver's Freighter, this is an interesting one. I don't really see it as being viable in Premier at all, to be honest, but when played, you may ready another unit with power equal to or less than the number of upgrades on enemy units. So, as there's 3 other players, this does become fairly viable and possible that you'll actually be able to activate the effect. Interestingly as well, it doesn't say a friendly unit, so again, you could do a bit of negotiation and say, well, I can ready your TIE Phantom. If I do that, you hit this guy's base, please. So yeah, some interesting possibilities for the Slaver's Freighter. Gladiator Star Destroyer, mainly to protect yourself, but if an opponent is close to death and you think that'll mean someone else will win, you could give an enemy unit Sentinel to protect them for another phase whilst you get your ducks in a row to win the game yourself. So yeah, that has some interesting options for Twin Suns as well. Ruthless Raider, there's not much to be said about that. Relentless is our highest space unit, so just limits everyone's options if you're able to get to that point, which you may not be able to. On to most of the events. So Daring Rage is for some removal. McClunky, we've got a lot of underworld units. I'm not entirely sure of the exact split, but you'll have a lot of options to be able to actually use this. I mean, Salacious Crumb is the best option because he only costs 1, and then you can play him again for cheap. Grenade Strike, so this is good in Twin Suns because dealing 1 damage to another unit in the same arena doesn't have to be the same player. So, I mean, you could do it to yourself on Kasantan, for example, or just do it to another enemy unit controlled by another player. No Good to Me Dead, we all know what that does. Merciless Contest, this is really good in Twin Suns because each player chooses a non-leader unit they control, defeats those units. So, I mean, if you've got no units out yourself, then you are defeating probably 3 other units, 1 for each player. So, yeah, particularly good with Twin Suns. No Bargain, this is another one that gets better with Twin Suns because every opponent discards a card from their hand and you get to draw 1. Open Fire, just some simple removal. Relentless Pursuit, so this is a card I've always been pretty big on and no one really uses it. But choose a friendly unit, catches an enemy non-leader unit, costs the same as or less than it. If a friendly unit is a bounty hunter, it gets a shield. We've got a lot of bounty hunters despite the card limitation of only having 1 of each, but we do still have a lot of bounty hunters, Bossk being one of them. So yeah, you could be protecting Bossk, your leader, which is going to be quite significant because you will be able to have more of a chance of double claiming some bounties. So yeah, all good stuff. Resupply, just to help us get to the late game if we end up drawing it. Overwhelming Barrage, it's green villainy, it's essential. You're going to have a lot of options to hit enemy units, do some negotiations, all that good stuff. Caught in a Crossfire, this is a really interesting one for Twin Suns because choose two enemy units in the same arena. Again, it doesn't say they have to be the same player, so each of those units deals damage equal to its power to the other. So ideally, you're going to be wiping out two different threats, possibly from two different players. If one player is getting a substantial unit presence, then you can help to keep that under control. But yeah, I think Caught in a Crossfire is going to be very good for Twin Suns in general. And then we've got our bounties and single upgrade, all of them debilitating. So Bounty Hunter's Quarry, what I should remind again with the bounties is be mindful of when and where you are placing them because you may not actually be able to claim it yourself. It might be another player that claims it. But again, you can do a bit of politicking and say, well, if I put this bounty on it, are you going to be able to claim it? And if you do, ignore me for a little bit. So yeah, anyway, Bounty Hunter's Quarry, if the card is unique, you search for top 10 cards for a 3 cost unit and play it for free. So if you manage to hit the client off of this, the aspect penalty doesn't matter because it costs 3 as a base. So yeah. Enticing reward. Ideally, you want to put this on a unique unit, which is more difficult with Twin Suns, I would say. But search top 10 cards of your deck for 2 non-unique cards, reveal them and draw them. If it's not unique, then you have to discard a card from your hand. So you could, if there's one existing in your hand that you're not particularly impressed with, or one of 2 new ones, you can get rid of any of them. So Death Mark, just another way of drawing more cards. Price on your head, this is probably the most significant bounty. You have to be careful of where and when you're placing because you're probably not going to want your opponents to be able to get an extra resource. But again, that would be a strong negotiating tool as well. And then Frozen in Carbonite, if someone has a lethal threat or if one of their units is getting completely jacked to the gills, you can just put a halt on that and say no, actually, you are doing nothing anymore, unless they find a way of removing the upgrade. So yeah, that is the deck. I haven't done a wildcard section because it's kind of pointless with Twin Suns because you're going to be using a lot of cards that you probably wouldn't use otherwise. But yeah, let me know what you think. What leader combinations do you like? I think one of my local groups we're going to be doing Twin Suns more often, so this will become semi-regular, I guess. I do have my next pairing well, not figured out. I know which pairing I'm going to go with. I just need to actually make a deck. I think at the moment I've got like 100 cards selected for it, so obviously I need to focus that down quite significantly. But yeah, let me know what you think. If you're not interested in Twin Suns at all, then by all means feel free to say, and I'll take that into consideration. But yeah, like and subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next video.